think it's time for Jack to let her rip.
Metal Gear is my favorite and most beloved series of all time, and after playing the most recent entry, it's time for me to review Metal Gear Rising Vengeance Damn it! It has Raiden and not Snake in it. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is a spin-off to the series and has made some serious changes to the series, going from a tactical stealth action game to a hack-and-slash kill everything and don't stop pressing the attack button ever game. So as a huge Metal Gear fan, will Rising get a high score from me regardless of the fact that this is my favorite series of all time? Well, it's time to put aside the hype and look at it from a realistic point of view and break it down to see if this game is not only worth buying to a Metal Gear fan, but to people who have never played the series before. Metal Gear Rising takes place in 2018, 4 years after Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns to the Patriots, with Raiden as the main protagonist, of course, who is a badass cyborg ninja who works for a private military company, or PMC for short, called Maverick Enterprises. Well, it was just another day at the office for Raiden when he was sent to protect the prime minister of an unknown African country when suddenly a rival PMC unit called Desperado Enterprises showed up and just fucked everyone's day. Especially the prime minister's day, since he got assassinated. But don't worry, chill the fuck out. That isn't a spoiler. It was told in the trailers before release, so relax your butthurt. Anyways, Raiden tried to save the prime minister, but was too late and encountered a swordsman named... Get ready for this. His name's so fucking badass. Sam. Jetstream Sam! But Raiden soon realizes that Sam's battle experience isn't as lame as his name and loses his eye and arm during an intense epic battle. A month of shame goes by, and Raiden recovers with some super cool cybernetic enhancements and returns back to the country he failed to protect to stop the power-hungry PMC that has by now flooded in this poor country to perform a coup d'etat on the shattered government, and it's up to Raiden and his team of not-so-memorable characters to put a stop to the chaos. What happens along the way in the 6 to 8 hour campaign? Well, I'd rather not spoil that in this review, but I will say this much. The story is really interesting, but it is not as in-depth as previous Metal Gear games before it, but it is still entertaining regardless. It just didn't have the same emotions the previous games made you feel. One thing I did enjoy is that this game dives deeper into Raiden's character than other games, which is absolutely fascinating and sometimes scary. Why scary, you ask? Well, I guess that's just something you're gonna have to find out on your own by playing it. The graphics, in short, are fucking amazing. I expected nothing less from a Metal Gear game, so it didn't really surprise me to see it, but at the same time, it impressed me, which surprised me. The character models are incredible and are full of impressive details, especially the bosses. Speaking of impressive details, pretty much everything on the battleground is interactive with Raiden's sword, which surprised me. To go up to a car or telephone pole and to cut it and break it down is outrageously fun. The environments are absolutely gorgeous to look at and make you feel a part of a world that is real. On the other hand, things that are not so pretty to look at, or maybe so, depending on your view on it, would be the intense gore and blood once you dismember a person with your sword and to watch their limbs and fleshy body parts get torn to shreds. Okay, I'm holding back on this. It's not ugly to me. It's the awesomest shit ever! It's so cool! Even watching the robots getting scrapped into pieces is so much fun to watch and to battle against. And that says a lot coming from me, because for those who don't know, I don't particularly favor the sci-fi genre, and I typically don't prefer having my opponents to be mechanical machines or robots. I prefer humanoids, because for me, it's more fun to fight than robots. I don't mind bosses as robots, but to have the standard enemy as a robot just isn't as fun for me to kill, because I simply prefer humanoid enemies that splatter and splatter these cyborgs do. The game is a linear hack and slash with very little stealth elements, which is totally the opposite of what the Metal Gear series has been all about. But hey, change isn't always a bad thing, as long as it's done right, and to be perfectly frank, Platinum Games nailed it. The gameplay is super fast but smooth, fun, with easy controls, yet with enough depth to perform combos, and unique abilities you can unlock by earning BP or battle points to buy moves, health, and other things to customize and improve Raiden, which adds variety to the combat as the game progresses. Since we are on the topic of variety, you have the option to use secondary or alternative weapons. Personally, I never used either, because I was more interested in using Raiden's katana only, since it was fun and challenging. The secondary weapons like the RPG just felt too cumbersome, and I just felt that it wasn't necessary to even use them through my entire playthrough. I mean, it's a nice addition for those interested, but I never was. However, that nano-paced health healing stuff? Man, I needed that shit. Without it, I would have died a million times. The most unique and interesting feature is called Zandatsu, which means cut and take, which involves cutting through your enemies and taking their energy from the bodies of dismembered cyborgs and robots, which heals you. It's really gruesome, but it's so fucking cool. Blade mode is extremely interesting since you can choose where and how to cut. Speaking of which, the cut mechanics are visually impressive, even though it can sometimes be a bit ridiculous to watch Raiden cut a support beam of a bridge or something like that, with very little effort in one swing. But speaking of ridiculous, that was nothing compared to some of the action sequences which sometimes literally made me say, wow, really? Some of which include watching Raiden run up a building, or throw a Metal Gear ray, then sprint along the arm, finally jumping in the air, and cutting it in half like it was paper, and not a giant motherfucking armored battle robot! But despite all that over-the-top ridiculousness, it still has a special kind of charm to it, which makes it fucking awesome. One thing that I found to be very interesting would be the parry mechanic, which I found to be frustrating at first. It's definitely the most unique controls I have ever used, and it took me a little over an hour to completely master. You have to push the joystick in the direction of the attack and press the light attack button, so parrying does not have a specific button, which I completely cursed at first. I was being thrown around like a ragdoll at some points, which really pissed me off since I couldn't time it properly and would press buttons too frantically. After a while, I decided to stop sucking, and from that point on, I got better at it and grown to love the unique and different parry mechanic I have never seen in a game before. One more thing added to this game to add replay value is the optional choice of selecting VR missions, which you unlock by finding computers in the main story where these missions come with certain challenges. It's all about completing it as fast and efficient as possible to get the most points. Some of which are simple to follow, like kill all enemies, or will have a specific parameter, such as kill all enemies, but with Senjutsu! God, I was saying that. There are other more challenging objectives, such as getting to a designated area without being spotted. The VR missions I found to be fun and interesting, but it's just a shame that if you miss a few computers, you will have fewer options to choose from. But I guess that's where the fun comes from, trying to find them all. Oh, and one last thing before we move on. You have the option to view your collection, but I found this to be the dumbest and most useless thing ever. Yeah, but I guess I had to make mention of it at least. This game has probably the best action music I have heard in the Metal Gear franchise. Sure, there have been some awesome action tracks in the past, along with some really emotional ones, but Rising really focuses on more of that high-speed adrenaline combat, and the music fits to it perfectly, and I love it. There are only two things missing, I noticed. First is the Metal Gear style theme, surprisingly. And lastly, it's missing a game over theme. Now, I know this might seem insignificant at first, but when you think about it, the Metal Gear series has always been mostly famous for both the cardboard box and the classic game over theme, where when you die, the familiar classic song starts playing, with the character yelling out, "Snake! Snake! Snake!" In Rising, it just immediately leads you to a game over screen, with no change in music or any cool animations, which was upsetting, but the classic yelling was still there, but I felt that it didn't have the same kind of feel to it. Again, not a big deal, but still slightly disappointing since the game over screen from Metal Gear Solid 4, for example, made me shit bricks the first time I died. It was probably one of the coolest game over screens where it shows quick flashbacks of previous cutscenes with its own game over music with a character yelling Snake's name, and I was just disappointed Rising didn't have that. But I digress. Despite that, the classic alert sounds, codec calls, and all that good stuff is still there. Combat sounds, everything is just fantastic. The only thing I couldn't stand is the doctor's voice actor. I mean, I don't know. He just pissed me off, and he just didn't stop talking, which made me want to punch a kitten. Yes, a kitten! That's how irritated he made me sometimes. But he's a nice guy, so I guess I can't stay mad at him for too long. It was a strange change for the series to go to a hack and slash genre, but it turned out to be a very interesting and well put together spin-off, especially considering the troubles this project had since it started back in 2009. The gameplay is great, it looks fantastic, and the music and sound effects are awesome with some classic sounds thrown in there, and the story actually is really awesome to be a standalone title. Sure, there's some references to the previous Metal Gear games before thrown in there that newcomers won't totally understand, but I was surprised to see that there was not much of that stuff involved, giving this game its own ground to stand on, which makes it a perfect Metal Gear game for newcomers to dive into. As for you Metal Gear fans, worry not! This game truly harnesses the Metal Gear spirit with its storytelling, its weird sense of humor, and solid gameplay, even though yes, it is different, but it's not bad as far as a hack and slash game goes. In fact, it's probably one of the best hack and slash games I have played, rivaling God of War, which in my book has remained the king of the hack and slash genre until this game came around. Admittedly, it took me a bit to warm up to, but once I got used to it, I'm happy to see this game bear the title of Metal Gear, as it lives up to the name and goes beyond the series' expectations.
Kratos.